The morning sun climbed lazily over the rusted zinc rooftops of Yumyuk village, spreading its warmth across the wide compound of the late Mama Yugo. The earth, damp from the early dew, smelled fresh, but not everywhere. At the edge of the village, not far from the bush path that led to the stream, there lived a girl no one dared to speak to, let alone touch. Her name was Alubub, but the children had long renamed her Alubub Nsu, Alubub the smell. She didn't smell of sweat. It wasn't body odor. It wasn't even anything people could exactly describe. But when you came close, it hit you like smoke trapped in old cloth. Sour, stale, strange, and thick, it was a stench that kept people away like a curse. If she entered a gathering, even goats would start running. If she stood in line at the borehole, mothers would drag their children away. If she tried to sell anything in the market, buyers would run before she even said a word. People said many things. She must be possessed. Maybe she's paying for the sins of her parents. Some things are better left alone. At first, when she was 10, she cried every day. She tried to scrub her skin until it turned red, poured hot water mixed with Dettol, soaked her clothes in kerosene, burned expensive perfumes that were once gifts from her late parents, and even rubbed ash and bitter leaf. Nothing helped. The smell remained, like a spirit walking with her, whispering wickedness into people's noses. Now at 22, she no longer cried. What was the point? Nobody wanted to touch her, talk to her, or even sit near her. She stopped going to the market. She stopped going to the church. She stayed in her mother's small mud house with broken windows and a leaking roof, coming out only early in the morning to sweep or late in the night to fetch water. But amidst all the rejection and silence, there was one voice that didn't shake, one foot that didn't run away, one soul that didn't judge. Chikamso. He was her only friend. He was 26, tall and lean with kind eyes and rough hands from years of farming. He wasn't wealthy, but he had something greater than money, a heart strong enough to stay. He would come every evening, sometimes with ajadai and okra, sometimes with palm wine and stories. He would sit just far enough to breathe, but close enough to care. Bube, he would call her. Come and hear the latest gist. One madman in the market today said he wants to run for counselor. She would giggle shyly, her voice light and soft like rainfall. Sometimes he would bring her old books to read. Sometimes he just sat with her in silence while the crickets sang. The smell was always there, like a heavy blanket, but Chikamso endured it. Not because he was used to it, but because he believed. One day, it will stop, he told her. Maybe it's just something your body is fighting. Maybe there's a solution somewhere. She never replied. She was too afraid to believe. Then, one day, everything changed. It was on a Monday morning. The villagers gathered at the community square. The chairman of the local government had sent a medical team from the city to spend 3 months offering free checkups and treatments. Among the team was a tall, light-skinned doctor named Dr. Obinais. His accent was sharp, his clothes clean, his smile charming. He was the type of man who turned heads when he walked into a room, and the type who left girls whispering for hours after. He didn't like noise. He didn't like gossip. He came to work. But what he didn't expect to find in a small village like Yumyuk was a mystery. A girl everyone avoided like a living plague. It happened on his second week. He had just finished attending to a malaria patient when he noticed something strange at the edge of the compound. A girl, sitting under a tree, alone. He watched as 2 young women walked past her and hurried away, holding their noses. He saw an old man cross the road to avoid her. He watched a small child burst into tears just by standing close. Dr. Obina was curious. Who was this girl? Why was she being treated like an animal? The next day, he decided to approach her. Hello, he said gently. Alubub blinked. She looked around. Surely he couldn't be talking to her. I'm Dr. Obina. I came from Enugu for this community program, he added. She nodded, her lips shaking. He smiled. What's your name? Alubub, she whispered. Nice name. Can I sit here? She panicked. No. I mean, you don't have to. You can stand there. But Obina ignored the warning and sat beside her. The smell hit him like a slap. His face twitched slightly, but he didn't move. They spoke for 15 minutes. Then 30. Then an hour. They talked about books, about life in Enugu, about the strange rooster that always crowed at midnight. And when he stood up to leave, he did something no one had done in over 12 years. He held her hand, firmly, and smiled. That evening, The whole village buzzed like a disturbed hive. Women whispered in their kitchens. Men laughed at their drinking spots. Even children started a new song. Doctor No Day Get Nose. He don't hold all you bube hand oh. One old woman in the clinic finally asked him bluntly, Doctor, are you not smelling that girl? Or is it that your own nose day do holiday? The next day, everything made sense. Obina realized it wasn't ordinary. And that night, he went to her house, furious, confused, and determined. The wind that blew through Yumyuk village that evening carried whispers, sharp, judgmental, and thick with disbelief. How could the new doctor, a man from the city, with perfume and proper shoes, sit so comfortably with Alubub? Had he lost his sense of smell? Or worse, had he lost his mind? The whispers reached even the corners of the bush path where hunters laid their traps. They danced from mouth to mouth like wildfire, lighting up the village with a fresh scandal. But in the little mud house with a cracked door and faded curtains, Alubub wasn't hearing any of it. Her heart was too full, too loud, to notice anything else. No one had ever treated her like a human being. Not the Reverend Father. Not the teachers. Not even the kind market woman who gave leftover yam peels to goats. But this doctor, he touched her hand, and he smiled. He didn't flinch. He didn't run. And for the first time in years, she didn't want to be alone. But just as peace began to settle in her chest like morning fog, a loud knock crashed into her evening silence. Bam! 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 She jumped. Nobody ever knocked on her door. Not even Chikamso. He usually called out from the mango tree and waited for her to come out. She froze, her hands shaking as she moved to open the door. It was Dr. Obina. But this wasn't the calm, smiling man from earlier. His eyes were red, not with anger, but something deeper, something heavier. He didn't wait for her to speak. So you knew? He asked. She swallowed. Knew what? That everyone avoids you because of the smell? She looked away, ashamed. And you never told me? His voice cracked, not in rage, but in wounded confusion. I was walking around like a fool, thinking I was building friendship, not knowing the whole village thought I was crazy for coming near you. I didn't mean to lie, she said quietly. I was enjoying your company. That's all. I didn't want it to end. Silence fell between them. Heavy. Cold. He sighed. Boubet, I'm not angry. I'm just shocked. You should have told me. I'm a doctor. If this is medical, we can try to figure it out. If it's spiritual, we can look for help too. She stepped back, eyes glistening. So you won't stop talking to me? Obina smiled faintly. No. But from today, we start digging. The next week became a whirlwind of questions, tests, and silent hope. Obina spent his nights researching rare skin conditions and chronic body odor syndromes. He called a few old classmates. He even took a small sample of Alubub's sweat to the lab the medical team had set up in the community center. The results were unusual. There was a high level of bacteria present in her sweat glands, a rare medical condition known as trimethylamine or fish odor syndrome. It was uncommon, especially in rural areas where access to modern diagnosis was nearly impossible. She was born with it. Obina explained to Chikamso one evening as they sat under the mango tree. Her body can't break down certain chemicals properly. That's why the smell never leaves, no matter how much she bathes. Chikamso nodded slowly. So it's treatable? Yes. Not curable, but manageable. With the right diet, supplements, and skincare routines, the smell can reduce drastically, sometimes disappear completely. Obina paused, then asked, Why did you stay, though? With her. All these years. Chikamso smiled, his eyes soft. Because she never deserved the loneliness. And even if she smells, her heart doesn't. That night, Obina returned to Alubub's home with a full bag, tablets, soaps, a new diet chart, and hope. This is the beginning, he said. If you stay committed, we'll get results. Alubub stared at the items like sacred treasures. She nodded. Thank you for not running. I'm a doctor, he said gently. I don't run. I fix. The days turned to weeks. And for the first time since she could remember, Alubub began to smell like nothing. And that was a miracle. The stench faded slowly like an old curse lifting. Children no longer screamed when she passed. The market women stopped wrinkling their noses. Even the goats stopped avoiding her. At church, people no longer changed seats when she entered. It was as though her life had hit a silent reset button. But not everyone was pleased. Nkechi, the nurse attached to the medical team, had started noticing the closeness between Obinna and Alubub. Her lips curved in judgment every time she saw them together, sitting under the orange tree near the health center, laughing like old friends. She pulled Obinna aside one afternoon. "You need to be careful," she warned. "Careful of what?" "This girl. She's not in your class. You came to help the community, not fall in love with charity." Obinna laughed softly. "Kechi, don't be ridiculous." But even he knew that her words held weight, because back in Enugu, Obinna was engaged. His fiancée, Adora, was planning their wedding. She had no idea what was unfolding in a tiny village with red sand and hidden stories. So Obinna pulled back. He started limiting his visits to Alubub. He no longer held her hand. He kept things professional. He still checked on her progress, but the warmth faded like a dying fire. Alubub noticed. One evening, she asked quietly, "Did I do something wrong?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "No, it's just, I'm going back soon." "To Enugu?" He nodded. "My assignment is ending in 2 weeks." She tried to smile. "I'm happy for you." But deep down, her heart had started hoping, and now it was learning how to break quietly. The final twist came during Obinna's send-off ceremony. The village held a celebration. Palm wine flowed. Drums beat. Speeches flew like feathers in the wind. Adora arrived in a sleek Corolla, dressed in yellow lace. Her makeup sharp, her confidence sharper. She walked straight to Obinna and planted a kiss on his cheek, laughing loudly as she clung to his arm. Alubub stood at a distance, her heart pounding. People turned to look at her, wondering how she would react. But she smiled. She had smelled like death for 20 years and still survived. She could survive this too. 3 months later, Alubub got married. Not to Obinna, but to Chikamso, the boy who stood by her when nobody could breathe around her. The man who waited, who believed, who never once called her Alubub Nsu. Their wedding was simple but beautiful. Obinna sent a gift from Enugu and a letter that read, "Bube, I came as a doctor. I left as a friend. And I will never forget the lesson you taught me. That healing is not just of the body, but of the soul. Love deeply, live freely, and may your new life smell only of joy." That year, 2 families, Obinna's and Chikamso's, became family friends. And as for Alubub, she never walked with her head down again. Because even if the world had once avoided her, one man had stayed. And that made all the difference. The early morning rooster cried twice that day, as if it knew something different had happened in Yumyuk. The village air carried not the scent of harmattan dust or burning firewood, but the aroma of fresh bread, laughter, and new beginnings. It was the first week after Alubub's wedding, and everything had changed. Gone were the days when she walked with her face to the ground, hiding from the looks, the whispers, and the shame. Now, she walked tall, hand in hand with Chikamso, the man who once waited outside her house every night with only faith and a small lantern. And though their wedding ceremony had been modest, nothing like the flamboyant city-style celebrations with flashy asoabi and rented canopies, it was the most heartfelt moment Yumyuk had witnessed in years. People were still talking about it. Can you imagine? That same Alubub. She looked so beautiful and no single smell. Nothing. I hear the doctor from Enugu treated her. Chai, see what knowledge can do. But in the hearts of many, it wasn't just the transformation that surprised them. It was the fact that love chose her. Love that wasn't born from wealth, charm, or beauty, but from a place deeper and purer than most people could understand. And with that love, her new life began. Every morning, Alubub woke up before the sun. She would sweep their small compound while humming old folk songs her mother used to sing. Then she would prepare pap and akra for Chikamso before he went to his farm. She was no longer afraid to walk to the village market. She no longer hid behind trees to avoid people. The old smell that once followed her like a shadow had become a distant memory, a ghost she no longer feared. Children who once screamed at her now followed her around, calling her Auntie Bube and begging for chin-chin. Some of the older women, the same ones who had once spat on the ground when she passed, now came to her for beauty tips and even advice. It felt like a joke sometimes, but it was real. The transformation was real. Still, Alubub never allowed pride to sit in her chest. She remembered the days of rejection, of silence, of crying on her mother's grave, begging for a miracle. She remembered the loneliness that wrapped her like a cold wrapper for years. So instead of bitterness, she wore gratitude. And slowly, she began to build her dream. The idea came to her one night while lying on a raffia mat beside Chikamso under the stars. I want to help girls like me, she whispered. Girls like you? He asked, his eyes still fixed on the night sky. Yes, girls who've been rejected. Girls who are suffering from things they don't even understand. Some of them might be hiding, like I did. Some may even die in shame without ever knowing their problem had a name or a solution. Chikamso turned to her, holding her hand. Then let's build something. A foundation, or a small health outreach. Even if it starts with one girl, that's enough. And that was how the dream started. Olubu began saving from the little money she made selling zobo, puff puff, and soaps. Chikamso added from the proceeds of his yam farm. They reached out to Obinna in Enugu, who was more than eager to help. He promised to visit the village every 2 months to volunteer for free. And soon, a small mud structure was built at the edge of the village, right where people once refused to walk because they claimed Olubu's stench haunted the place. They called it Insha Ozioma, the healing scent. It became a place where girls and young women could come without fear or shame. Some came with skin infections. Some came with mysterious odors. Some came with emotional wounds, scars deeper than any disease. And they were all received with love, because Olubu knew exactly how they felt. One hot Thursday afternoon, just as Olubu was arranging files on a wooden desk in the health center, a white Toyota Corolla pulled up at the entrance. The tires stirred red dust into the air, and for a moment, she squinted, trying to see who it was. Then the door opened, and Dr. Obinna stepped out. This time, he wasn't wearing his usual doctor coat. He was dressed casually, holding a small box in his hand. She smiled warmly. Doctor, you're late. He laughed. Traffic. The village roads have not improved at all. She led him inside, offered him water, and sat across from him. They talked for a long time, about life, about the outreach, about the progress. Then he handed her the box. What's this? She asked. Open it. Inside, she found a stethoscope, neatly wrapped in red cloth. For the clinic? She asked, puzzled. No, for you, Obinna said. I registered you for the next community health extension course in Enugu. It's time you got trained. You're already a healer. This just makes it official. Tears stung her eyes. You really think I can do it? I know you can. You've done more for this village than many trained doctors have. You didn't just get healed, you became a light. She hugged him, full of gratitude. From a distance, someone might have mistaken them for lovers. But they weren't. They were two people tied together by fate, healing, and a shared journey that changed both their lives. It was months later when Obinna returned to Yumyuk again, this time with someone in the car. His wife, Adora. She had always been beautiful, but there was a gentleness to her now, a maturity that came from seeing life from the other side of glamour. Adora smiled and hugged Olubu. I've heard so much about you, she said. You're even more incredible in person. Olubu blushed, surprised. Thank you. I must confess, Adora continued. When Obinna first told me about you, I was unsure. Jealous even. But now that I've seen all this, you, the clinic, everything, you have my respect. That evening, both families, Chikamso and Olubu, Obinna and Adora, sat under the stars, sharing roasted yam and stories. They laughed. They shared memories. And at some point, when the crickets grew louder and the wine got sweeter, Adora leaned toward Olubu and whispered, You're proof that sometimes, the people the world pushes away are the very ones it needs the most. Years passed. Insha Ozioma grew. More volunteers came. Nurses, health workers, even traditional herbalists brought in safe natural products for testing and guidance. And all over Igbo land, people whispered the story of a girl who once carried a stench like death, but became a woman whose presence smelled of healing, hope, and second chances. And in the quiet of her soul, Olubu always said one prayer. God, thank you for the smell that brought me pain, because in the end, it led me to purpose. Rain fell on Yumyuk like a mother's prayer, gentle, steady, cleansing. The dusty village paths glistened with wet earth. Children danced barefoot in the puddles. Roosters tucked themselves under old kitchen sheds. Somewhere in the far corners of the village, a masquerade's drums throbbed faintly in the distance. Inside the now well-painted building of Insha Ozioma, the healing center Alubub founded with Chikamso, patients sat quietly on a wooden bench. They weren't just from Yumyuk anymore. They came from Engwo, Orlu, Oweri, and sometimes even from towns far beyond. Places where word had spread of a woman who once carried shame in her scent, but now walked with power in her name. Her name no longer stirred pity. Her name no longer brought wrinkled noses or whispers. Her name now meant freedom. That morning, while sorting through a box of files and donations, Alubub found a small brown envelope tucked beneath some notebooks. Her fingers paused, feeling something unusual about the paper. It was old. The handwriting was familiar. She opened it slowly. My Bube, if this letter ever reaches you, then I've succeeded in placing it where your healing would eventually find you. I am sorry I left you so early. I tried my best. I knew something wasn't right with your body even as a baby, but there was no money and no help came. I prayed every night. I tried every native remedy. But in the end, I could only leave you to the God who sees all things. Please, never think you are cursed. Never believe what the world tells you. One day, someone will see you, not your smell, not your shame, but you. And when that day comes, walk with pride. For you, my daughter, are more than what they feared. You are what they needed. Love always. Your mother, Mama Yugo. Alubub didn't cry loudly. She simply closed her eyes, held the letter to her chest, and let a single tear roll down her cheek. The final one she would ever cry for her past. She had found the truth. She had found her voice. And now, she had found her mother's love again, hidden in the shadows of memory. That week marked 1 year since Insha Ozioma was launched. Chikamso insisted they mark the date not with loud celebration, but with a simple village outreach. So they organized a Day of Healing, a free community program where women could get medical checkups, counseling, herbal treatments, and even skill-building classes. The village square overflowed with people. Tents flapped in the breeze. Banners waved with the words, "There is no shame in sickness. There is only shame in silence." Obina returned from Enugu with Adora again, this time with 2 nurses and new medical kits. Adora even helped teach women how to make soap and perfume. The irony wasn't lost on Alubub. "I used to smell of death," she whispered to Adora as they handed out gift packs. "Now I'm teaching women how to smell sweet." Adora squeezed her hand. "That's not irony, Bube. That's grace." Just before the closing prayers were said, an elderly woman was helped to the front of the gathering. She was thin, her wrapper torn in places, her eyes sunken but sharp. "Who is she?" someone asked. "I don't know," another whispered. Then the woman spoke, her voice raspy but firm. "I came to see the girl they said used to smell like dog's urine." The crowd gasped. Alubub stood slowly, calm and unshaken. "That girl is me," she said. The old woman nodded. "I was the one who first called you Alubub NSU many years ago. It was in the market. You were 10. I remember how you ran away and fell beside a bag of Gary. I laughed. People joined me. I didn't know the smell was a sickness." The silence that followed felt like the whole village was holding its breath. "I came today," the woman continued, "not just for checkup, but to say sorry. Because when you become the healing in a place you were once the wound, the people must learn how to bow, not to your pride, but to your strength." She knelt. "I was wrong. Forgive me." And before Alubub could speak, other women from the crowd began to kneel too. Women who once avoided her. Women who once told their children to run when they saw her. Women who once spat near her compound and laughed when she passed. They knelt. And for the first time, it wasn't a scene of shame. It was a scene of healing. Alubub walked forward and helped the old woman up. "You don't need to kneel," she said. "Just promise me you'll help the next girl who comes to you smelling strange." The old woman nodded, weeping quietly. "I will. I will." That night, after the crowds left and the square was silent again, Alubub and Chikamso took a walk through the same bush path where she once hid from people. Fireflies blinked in the darkness. A faint moon hung low like a calabash in the sky. They walked hand in hand. "I was thinking," Chikamso said, "we should expand. Maybe open a second center in another village." Alubub nodded. "Yes, but let's start with sending letters to the schools. Teenage girls should hear this story too." He smiled. "You really don't want the world to ever forget what you went through, do you?" She looked at him, her eyes glowing like warm coal. "No. Not because I want pity, but because my story will be the reason some girl out there doesn't commit suicide because people laughed at her smell. They stopped under an udara tree. You know, Chikamso, she whispered. I used to pray that the smell would kill me. But now I thank God it didn't. He pulled her close. You smell like peace now. She laughed. That's better than perfume. And they kissed, gently, quietly, like the world had been waiting for it. Years later, Insha Ozioma became one of the most respected rural health initiatives in southeastern Nigeria. It inspired other health centers in poor villages and led to new policies about public health awareness in local schools. People never stopped telling the story of Alubube, the girl who once carried a curse on her skin, the girl who was untouchable, the girl nobody hugged, the girl nobody wanted, until love found her, until truth freed her, until healing transformed her. And in the end, she didn't just smell sweet. She became the very scent of hope.